Hello, Will here, and we're in the Skyrim, but we're not here to so much have a look at mods in Skyrim today. Uh, I want to do something a little bit different, and if you are on my Discord, you might have recently seen me post a thing on Discord like really recently about like wanting to talk about certain concepts about mods in ways of like maybe sort of like where I've gotten ideas from mods from, or how I come up with ideas from mods, or my ideas for like dungeon layouts and this, that, and the other, that kind of thing. Sort of like a so this won't be so much a tutorial as such. It's more just a concept of idea, like if you're someone who's like looking into doing mods yourself, or if you're wanting to try a different style of mod, uh, you know, this might be a video you might think about watching. Just depends on what kind of thing you're looking for. And for the first one I'm going to talk about is sort of the concept of where my ideas come from. Right. So, mod the concept number one is technically from suggestions made by people. Just anyone who is, basically mod suggestions. If someone comes to me and, you know, and they ask me like, oh, am I able to do this kind of mod, or am I able to do that kind of mod? And so that's one area. So but obviously, in the case of that, I have to see what kind of mod they're asking, what kind of mod they're asking for, you know, So obviously, yeah, I need to see, if they ask for this kind of particular kind of mod, is it doable? Will it work on? Aha. Will it work on? Will it work on PlayStation? Because since most of my mods I tend to release them out on PlayStation. I want to make sure that they can at least work on PlayStation. Obviously, if they're able to work on more system, also on Xbox and PC, then yeah, I may also put them on that. So, one criteria is for them to work on a system that I can actually test them on properly. Another part of that is obviously, is it doable to get it to work in Creation Kit? Can it actually be made within Creation Kit? Because obviously there are certain things that can't be done, and there are things that can be done. So obviously, that's going to sort of like change around a bit. So a person might come to me with an idea or suggestion, but then unfortunately that kind of idea is not possible to be done in Creation Kit. So obviously what I do then is obviously I let the person who's asked me about it, I say to them, and I let them know that technically, unfortunately, that kind of thing can't be done, but there is a little work around it. And how about, well, if I can't do like that, I could do it like this. Though obviously it won't be the way that you asked, but it's a way that it can be done, so it's similar, but also I can actually make it within the Creation Kit itself. So that's one area where I get ideas from mods from, is actually from the players, the players of the game. The second area, so okay, so concept number two is by actually just looking at the lore of the game. Look at what lore there is in either Skyrim or Elder Scrolls as a whole. So one example for this is Where Darkness Dwells. initially when I did the first with Darkest Trials, because obviously at the moment there's two Darkest Trial mods. For example, the first one, I wanted to make a dungeon mod, which is something I know, which is something that probably is more synonymous with me, is dungeon mods, rather than like texture overhauls and stuff like that. Is dungeon mods and story-based kind of story-driven kind of styled mods is what's more synonymous with me. And I wanted to do a dungeon mod, but I wanted to do one that was kind of supposed to be a bit like not so much scary and spooky, but more of a horror slash kind of like morbid kind of style mod. And I thought, well, I could base it on vampires for starters. I could base it on vampires. There you go. There's something a bit horror related inside of Skyrim. Vampires. But the problem is, vampires in general in the game, vampires in general, they're not massively interesting. And unfortunately, neither are really vampire lords, to be honest. The concept of vampire lords is also not overly interesting. But then obviously with the Dawnguard DLC, obviously that brought in, though obviously it was already established in lore, but they brought up again the whole concept of Daughters of Coldharbour. And I thought to myself, okay, let's have a look about Daughters of Coldharbour, what are Daughters of Coldharbour? Where did they come from? How did they come to be? That kind of style of thing. And then obviously looking at it and being like, okay, that's how they come to be. Something a bit taboo, a bit more morbid, a bit taboo kind of subject. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to base Where Darkness Dwells around the concept of Daughters of Coldharbour. But I wanted it to be a little bit different because I didn't want it to revolve around Molag Bal too much either. So I thought, okay, well, let's just change it up. We'll take that concept from that lore of Elder Scrolls, and I'll throw my own little thing into it. And obviously, one of those things into it was a vampire. This powerful vampire who suddenly formed a god complex and wanted to create his own Daughters of Coldharbour, but without the help of Molag Bal. Because again, that character's name was Von Lucarad, and Von Lucarad himself had created a god complex. He had a god complex about him. And and then obviously, and since I wanted to make it a bit darker, a bit more morbid, getting to touching on sort of like kind of like taboo subjects, and that's where that concept came from. And then after that, where Darkest Trials comes, Shadow Kingdom came after that, which that is another area where I get my mod ideas from. Is actually looking back at all the mods that I've done and thinking that maybe, do I want to do a sequel to it? Do I want to, or do I want to be, or is it sort of more like, I like that idea, I want to do that kind of a style of idea again, but change the story, touch on some other subjects, but follow the same principles as that story. So again, a good example of that is Where Darkness Dwells. So, the first Where Darkness Dwells, that was more in relation to vampires. Actual vampires. And, and it's about what this vampire family was doing, what these vampires were doing. And so then, obviously, then came the second one, which was Shadow Kingdom. A Shadow Kingdom story, though it does still revolve around vampires,
What do you need, my friend?
is also different in the ways of it's not just about the vampires.
What can I do for you?
Cause, yeah, you got the vampires, but the story revolved more around
Lead the way.
the character Daisy, and that's so that's who it followed more about. But also subject matter wise, it still delved into some morbid taboo subjects. But some of the subject matter in that one was also much, much darker. So I wanted to create a much darker story. So that's another area where concepts for the mods come from, is basically just doing a sequel to another one, or creating a mod on the same premise as one before, but just slightly changing it so it's a little bit of a different story kind to it. And so like the final kind of area where I would say I get concepts for mods is just by looking at real life. You know, looking at like old Scandinavian folklore tales, just other stories that there are in real life. You know, sort of like other things that are just around in the real world, kind of thing. You know. So it's like, for example, you know, you have Kungpung Alla, the Dwarven Undercity. There was a race in that I added to that called the Mirelingers. Now, the Mirelings are from Scandinavian folklore, and you know they're not from Elder Scrolls folklore lore or anything like that. They're actually from real world Scandinavian folklore. So Kungpung Alla kind of worked around that in the ways of its concept, in the ways of its story, in the ways of where the places where you went, what you would come across, were based on that concept of Mirelings. Though in Scandinavian folklore, Mirelings are more dangerous. They're much more dangerous. They're much more, they're not a good spirit. They're not a good ghost spirit, whatever you want to call them. They're not good. They're actually quite evil. But in Kungpung Alla, the Mirelings were just a race. You know, they weren't inherently evil. They weren't an inherently evil race or anything like that. They were just a rare race that was sort of like kind of dying out a bit. But you look at real life. You read stories in real life. You come across stories in real life. You come across events that happened in real life. You come across other things that you've seen or know of in ways of folklore from other countries in the real world, and and sometimes they kind of inspire me to create these kind of style mods, and this and that and the other. And I suppose there is one more, because some of them I have a couple of mods before where it's just I literally just had an idea spring up in my head. Why did they spring up in my head? No particular reason. They just suddenly came to my head. But that might be due more to for me. I have I would say I have a kind of a creative mind. I'm always thinking of new ideas. I'm always thinking of new stories to create, new stories to tell, new mods to build around those concept ideas on those stories. I'm constantly doing that all the time. So so that's sort of like kind of like the five main places where concept for my mods come from. One is from people who have suggested an idea to me, and then I sort of like work with that idea, and then it obviously turns into a mod. Another one is basing it on Elder Scrolls lore, stuff that comes up in Elder Scrolls lore, and this and the other. Whether it be Elder Scrolls as a whole, or it's actually something that's cropped up in Skyrim. Another one is basically based off the real world folklore, in a way to like either Scandinavian folklore, English folklore, any country's folklore really, basically. Another area is basically from mods that I previously made, and then I sort of get this concept idea of thinking like, you know what, I want to create a sequel to that idea. So then I get another idea from that. And the last one is just basically, sometimes I would just suddenly have an idea come into my head, and that's sort of like the fifth way. So so I suppose the moral for this really in the end is basically, it's like, if you're someone who wants to try and get into modding, or maybe do a dungeon mod, or create a story mod, or whatever kind of mod, when it comes to, if you're someone who's struggling for ideas, you're not so sure, where to go for an idea, or right about that, you just don't know where to go for an idea for a mod, then, it's basically, there's many places you can go to get ideas. Many places to go where you can get inspirations. You don't have to be excessively creative to be able to create a mod. Yeah. You can look anywhere to get an idea, to get an inspiration, to get a concept. You can look anywhere for that. But that's it, this is a slightly different kind of... It's a slightly kind of different kind of video, rather than doing a mod review. So, this was just one idea for this video. I probably will cover other subjects in other videos down the line. In a way to sort of like how to come up with ideas for stories, how to do layouts for stories and stuff like that. How to create a story, not just the mod around the story, but to create the story itself for a thing, and where I've got my ideas for these kind of stories before, and other ones like, where do I get my ideas for dungeon making, where did they come from, what inspires me to make the dungeons that I've made, then what kind of inspirations do I look at for that kind of thing, just like little tidbits here and there, and just like, just to give you a bit of an insight to a modder's mind, this is basically. But right, so that's going to be it for this video. I mean, yeah, it's slightly different, hopefully it's interesting, I hope. But yeah, obviously definitely very different kind of story. But yeah, so yeah, hopefully this inspires you to look at how to create certain things, or how to go around making mods in a different way, rather than just being, well, I like that kind of mod, I'm going to create the same thing. It's like, no, don't create the same thing. If you come across a mod and you think, oh, I want to create a mod like that, yeah, create a mod like it, but make it your own as well. Don't just copy the idea, because there's so many mods that copy other ideas from other people, and they end up being basically the same thing. Take the idea of that person's mod and give it your own twist. But right, that's going to be it for this video. So if you did like this video, and if you did find it interesting, why not leave a like, and why not subscribe to your channel? I got other Skyrim videos on here, whether it be reviewing mods, doing walkthroughs for larger scale mods, mod reviews in ways for the smaller mods. I've also got some creation kit tutorials on here on how to do certain aspects of, in the ways of basic dungeon building, for example. But if you got any mods that you want to suggest to me to review further down the line or anything like that, or if you got any other questions that you want to ask me about modding or anything in relation to modding or anything like that at all, then you can also find me on Discord, which I will leave a link in the description below to my Discord, where you can post those kind of questions or leave those kind of suggestions. So that's going to be it for this one. So until next time, I'll see you all later.